Hi folks, and welcome to Breaking Woke, how to identify, debunk and dismantle politically correct ideas. I'm Douglas Kruger, author of the global new book, Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good. Today we're going to look at understanding the psychology of your interlocutor, the people against whom you debate on important issues. And today's lesson is called The Three Laws of Robotic Liberalism, in a tribute to Isaac Asimov's The Three Laws of Robotics. Now, in most of the videos that we cover, we look at specific flaws, fallacies, and errors in reasoning. But here we're going to go one step backward and ask, what is the impetus, what is the guiding and animating force behind these flaws? And we're looking in particular at modern liberals. Now, we draw a distinction here between the classical liberal and the modern progressive liberal. Now, very quickly, the classical liberal is defined by rule of impartial law. In other words, everyone is treated exactly the same, and then maximum personal liberty under the rule of an external impartial law that treats everyone the same. The progressive essentially reverses that formula by engaging in two things. Progressivism is largely defined by social engineering and by economic engineering. Now, both of those are done with the best of intentions, and both of those are done via the strong arm of the state. And that is key to understanding the difference between the classical liberal, which is everyone is free under the law, versus the progressive liberal who insists on state interference into family life, into civic life, into business life, into everything. And of course, the issue that we have with that is that it creates the conditions for the expanding scope of tyranny. If our knee-jerk reaction is always the government should, then the government will, and eventually everything is under the purview of the government. That is the formula for fascism. All things within the state, nothing outside of the state. So, the three laws of robotic liberalism. Why are we covering this one? Well, it just helps you to understand where these folks are coming from when you debate with them. You'll probably have discovered by now that there's an interesting dynamic in debating with a modern liberal. You can have the facts on your side, and the chances are you will. You can have sound economic theory, you can know your history, all factual evidence can be working in your favor, and yet you can't pierce the level of smug. Why? Well, because there's something going on in the background which is their understanding of their good intentions. With that, the three laws of robotic liberalism. The mindset that you are interacting with goes like this. Rule number one, we are good because we are the side of good intentions. And having good intentions means that you are good. Rule number two, anything that is bad is not from us and not our fault. Because bad things don't have good in them, and we are the side of good, because we have good intentions. Number three, if you are not us, you must be bad, because we are categorically all the good things combined. You therefore must be all the bad things combined, hate and evil and tyranny and ignorance and oppression, because that's all that is left outside of us. And everything that goes wrong or has ever gone wrong must be because of you and your bad intentions. They cannot possibly come from the left. Now, folks, there are two keys to unraveling the self-insulating delusion. The first key is that simple aphorism, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And we really need to take that one to heart because there is great truth behind it. We look in retrospect at massive tyrannies, the likes of Hitler's Nazi Germany or the likes of communist Russia, and we assume that these systems arose on the back of hate. If you go and read the history, the exact opposite is true. They arose on the back of good intentions, of fighting oppression, of social justice, of making everyone equal. If you want a truly hair-raising experience, go and read Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago. It will haunt your dreams, and yet it's written in such a matter-of-fact way that it brings to light what Russian tyranny was like, premised on this idea of the good of the masses and better for everyone and egalitarian equality. It was all instituted with the best of intentions. That aphorism is perhaps one of the most powerful and the most poignant ideas summing up the past century and its horrific tyranny. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And C.S. Lewis, of course, echoed that sentiment when he said, the worst tyrant, and I'm paraphrasing, I can't remember the exact wording, the worst form of tyranny comes from the person who is sincerely acting on good intentions, the ones who believe in what they are doing, because they are heartfelt and they will override certain logical things on the grounds that they are obviously the good people, because they are acting from good intentions. So that's the first key to understanding that one, is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the second key to approaching and responding to that is to actually state the good intentions up front. And I find an effective way to do it is this. You have to challenge the person who is expressing beliefs from a place of good intentions, but expressing an idea that will do disastrous harm to humanity. You challenge them to care about the results, not about self-righteousness. So you ask them, do you actually care about the outcomes for real people, or are you more emotionally invested in looking good and expressing how good you look? Now that is an awful challenge to a liberal, because of course the first rule says we are good because we are the side of good intentions. And you are pointing out a cognitive dissonance that says you can have good intentions and do great harm. So which do you prefer, genuinely doing good or simply looking good? I remember a specific example of this, well there are many of course, but one that springs to mind, of a colleague of mine speaking about the righteousness and the social good of the state confiscating land from one group of people and giving it to another. Now that is a microcosm for the entire problem. He gets to look good in recommending this loudly and publicly on a social platform. He gets to stand in judgment of one group and he gets to reward another at no cost to him. He's not talking about having his own home or land confiscated. That, of course, would be very, very different, because he's not the bad people. And that is, of course, why it can't happen to him, because he is the good side, because he is the side of good intentions. And therefore, he gets to be part of the state mechanism reaching into people's civic lives and doing great damage. So it's social engineering, and it is economic engineering. It is the opposite of liberty. Now, in many of the other videos, I will and have argued about why those two things, social engineering and economic engineering, do more damage than good, and why they are tyranny. Today, however, the goal is simply to look at the mindset going on behind the scenes. And folks, a good book recommendation for this one. There is a fabulous book, a New York Times #1 bestseller, and boy, that must have rankled the New York Times, by Jonah Goldberg, called Liberal Fascism. Now that's a title that's not going to sit well for a good many people. What he points out is precisely this dynamic, how good intentions lead to tyranny, and he goes over the course of an entire century looking at how progressives and how liberals use good intentions to create tyranny. But of course the joke is they can't acknowledge this past, because everything that has happened that is bad cannot be their fault because they come from good intentions, and bad things are not good things because they don't have good in them and they are obviously good. It's self-insulating. It starts from this point of view of believing against all indicators, against all logic, that we are the side of good because we have good intentions, and not caring about the results, not caring about thinking a little deeper than that. So what does genuine goodness look like? Well, you don't have to use the state to do it. You can do it yourself. Genuine goodness is when you actually give to others out of charity. You don't volunteer someone else's resources out of your charity, which is really just hypocrisy and posturing. Genuine goodness is when you find people who need help and you help them, rather than playing the game of God where you pick the winners, you pick the losers, and you get to punish those who are not as righteous as you. How do you know you are righteous? Because you have good intentions, and the good side is the side of good intentions. What's the most recent example you've seen of a progressive liberal volunteering something righteous on someone else's behalf, or volunteering a punishment on someone else's behalf? Please do comment in the comment section below. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If the videos are proving useful to you, please do share them. And some good news from my part, the global book Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good has been out for about a month now, and it's taken a while for the audiobook to go through processing. Looks like it should be out within the next couple of days. Do have a look on Audible. Just type in Douglas Kruger or Political Correctness Does More Harm Than Good.